Now, with True Lies, you have a lot of really great scenes, and I couldn't help but notice how many explosions, machine gun battles. Have you ever been on a movie set that was so loud as this one?
No, I've never heard anything louder than when I was inside the compound hangar when all of the terrorists are shooting their machine guns off at once, when Arnold and I are up on top. It was a din that I've never heard. So loud.
Now, you wear a rather revealing outfit in the movie. Now, when you're shooting day in and day out with that type of short outfit, how difficult is it for you?
You mean the little dress or
Yes,
the G-string in the bra?
We'll dress first and then we'll talk about the G-string.
Well, I mean, I knew that from page 60 or 70 in the script to the end of the script, she's in this little black dress the whole movie. So we designed the dress very specifically that, we had one for me to run in, one for me to sit in, one for me to jump in, one for, we had to build them differently because, obviously that type of a dress you can't run barefoot through minefields in. But it was fun. I mean, it was just, what's fun is that idea that you're kind of captured at a time when it's most inconvenient.
And one final question, because I feel compelled to ask you about the G-string scene. How does the crew treat you on a day like that? Because I know that scene wasn't easy for you to shoot.
Well, it's never easy for you to shoot. Anytime you're exposing yourself in a vulnerable way, in a physical way, you're exposing yourself. You're exposing something to a group of people. And I have a sense of humor about anything I do. It's the way I get through my life. It's the way I get through my work. So I think I just walked on the set the first day and kind of dropped my dress and said, okay, let's check me out now. And I bent over and I, lifted my leg up over on the bed and I kind of grinded the bedpost and said, okay, we're there, we're fine, everybody's seen this, now let's just do the work. And then I did.
Okay, great. All right.
I think somebody dropped a camera lens when I licked the bedpost when that was... They were not expecting that, but other than that, they left me alone. They're very sweet,
Jim, I've always been fascinated about scenes that are in movie trailers but don't wind up in the final film. Now, we talked in Terminator...
I always get busted on this.
We talked in Terminator 2 about the Michael Biehn scenes.
Right.
I'm watching last night, I'm thinking, I don't see Charlton Heston say, I got
Mr.
my
President,
best friend.
I got one of my best men inside.
And
actually, the reason we took that out is because it was... well, we took a lot of stuff out for running time. I had to cut about, I think, 12 minutes out of the picture just to get it to a length where the pace was fast enough that people stayed up. You notice at the screening how they were laughing or they were cheering every 30, 40 seconds, something like that. It kept a sense of excitement going all the way through the movie. When the film was long, you didn't quite have that. It hadn't quite ignited yet. So that's one of the things that fell by the wayside. Okay. But is Heston great, though? Who can play Arnold's boss? Yeah. Who's more intimidating than he is?
What kind of presence does he have when he comes to the set, on you and on the crew?
You're talking about Charlton Heston?
Charlton, yes. Yeah.
Or Chuck, as he made me call him. He worked on the film for one day, and it was the single best shooting day I've ever had. He is the most consummately professional actor I've ever worked with. He was there for everything. He came with ideas. He didn't lock in on them. He did the bit, he knew the lines, he was there for every bit of off-screen for all the other actors, and it was just absolutely the most charming, professional guy I've ever worked with.
Now, you also...
And I've worked with some pretty cool people, So there. Okay. So there is something to be said for the old school of of acting, of how it's done.
Now, you worked with the military on this film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your reputation, you have a reputation of a big budget filmmaker. You have Arnold Schwarzenegger.
They have the big budgets. The military has the big budgets.
Now, when these military pilots arrive with their Harrier jets, just how jazzed are they to be a part of this movie?
Well, they have the best poker faces, these guys. You would never know that they were excited, but they're tickled pink to be doing it. But they can't let it in any way intrude on their process because they are flying a $30 million aircraft, and if they don't do it right, they're going to trash it and or hurt themselves or somebody else. So they're totally focused, and it was totally by the numbers. I got up at 3 a.m., flew in a helicopter down to Naval Air Station in Key West, briefed with the pilots for an hour and a half on paper and using models and so on. We did it by the numbers. We're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And I said, I'll see you in the air. I flew back up to our location, went up in a Learjet, and met them on station at like 400 knots, and we did the shots. And it was just like that.
You know, Arnold, I used to live in the snow, and it was always difficult walking around the snow, running in the snow. And I noticed here you have all these great action scenes out in the white stuff. Now, how difficult was it to shoot those sequences?
It is extremely difficult to shoot any snow sequence, especially at night, because first of all you have to go and find an area that has enough snow and that has snow-making equipment. Second of all, you have to find an area where you can use the snow equipment, where you can take the various different vehicles up into the mountains, where you have chair lifts and gondolas to take things up to the top, where you can build your own lift, where the camera can travel up and down on that lift on a cable and different devices like that. So it makes it very complicated. Also, you're dealing here with sub-zero temperatures where people are freezing all night, so you have to have the certain clothing and all this. And then the working itself, I mean, I remember that shootout scene that we had up there in Squaw Valley in the middle of the forest, running down between the trees and having all those guys with the skis follow me, you know, this James Bondian type of a scene with snowmobiles and all that. I mean, I wiped out left and right. Every time I turned around to try to fire, I smacked against a tree or I just slipped and fell on my face and stuff like that. It's very challenging to do that, but then it looks great. It looks different and it gives it a certain oomph to the movie.
You know, I haven't seen you, I don't think, on a horse in a film since the Conan films. Now, did you have to go through some refresher courses for this? And how did your horse react to shooting those scenes?
I own a horse myself, so I ride periodically since the Conan movies. So I'm very familiar with horseback riding, but that doesn't mean that I did not have to take lessons, because there were 3 or 4 different horses used for the stunts that had different abilities. I had to be familiar with all 3 or 4 horses. As a matter of fact, it ended up being 4 horses. I had to be familiar with all 4, because when I had to jump into the fountain, we had to use a jumper. When I rode through the park, it was just a quarter horse. It was different horses that we used in the film. So I practiced with all of them. I got them comfortable with me, and I made myself comfortable with them. And there were various different scenes that never even made it into the movies. I mean, jumping over cars or just walking over cars and all those things. It was a lot of fun, but, you know, dangerous.
You know, I love the Harrier jet sequences. And I'm wondering, when these military pilots, when they arrive at the location, when they land their airplanes, how jazzed are they about being in an Arnold Schwarzenegger film? And did you get some offers about going out for a quick spin around Florida at all?
Well, we did. I mean, we flew with it. We flew with this in a simulator also, where we did the actual piloting of the Harrier jet, and the pilots, the Marine pilots of the Harrier jets were extremely excited about being part of the movie. But I think that we were just as excited to have them part of the movie, because we needed the total cooperation of the Pentagon and also the United States Marine to use the Harrier jets and to use their equipment and all this stuff, which was very essential to make the movie what it is today, which is a movie, an action spy adventure movie of epic proportions.
What kind of impact does Chuck Heston have when he walks in on all the people around him?
Oh, I have a lot of respect for him, you know. It was, it was funny to see Arnold we were all kind of like kids, you know, and listened. He told a lot of stories, and you know, you hear one thing, you know, the guy's politics and, you know, the gun stuff and all this stuff and, you know, censorship. And then you meet him and, you know, he's a great guy. And then I thought to myself, well, you know, he thinks the same way that my grandpa thinks, or my parents. So, you know, it's not so strange, but he was a wonderful guy.
I love the van you were in, and I couldn't help but notice in the beginning when you're twirling all those dials.
Yes.
Now, how much of that stuff actually worked in there?
Well, I think it worked. It all worked until I started twirling the dials. But there was a lot of working stuff in there, and you know, several times I didn't know stuff was actual working stuff, and it was, and you know, we had to fix it.
And you spent a lot of time with Arnold sitting in cars. Now, what did you two talk about in between takes?
We talked about life in general. We talked about maybe the scene for a minute, and just kind of, gave each other a hard time, and talked about whatever was happening. Got a lot of good advice in that car.